Good morning, everyone. Sorry about the late start. We were having some technical difficulties with the recording. In any case, it is 8:30 on Friday, September 4th of 2020, and we'd like to welcome you to this latest edition of Livestream PD. Today, as we will be doing for the first Friday of every month, we will be hosting an Ed Services Q&A, which means that the whole live stream will be, well, after some announcements, will be driven by your questions in the forum. As we say every week, for any EdTech related issues, please email edtech@lsl.org. I feel like most people are getting pretty good at this, and we may even take this announcement out of rotation. So before we get to the Q&A part, education technology and the LSL Family Resource Centers have a pretty exciting announcement. The LSL Remote Instruction Parent Academy is actually live. It's hosted on remoteinstruction.org. And before I go any further, I would really like to thank both of my TOSAs and all the parent education specialists from the LSL resource family. This was definitely a team effort. It's pretty amazing what they've been able to put together. So we're just going to take kind of a live tour real quick here. So if you go to remoteinstruction.org, if you haven't been there in a little bit, you'll notice a couple things. First off, across the top is a banner that says Parent Academy /Academia de Padres. They can click here to jump right there. But for parents, there's also these two videos about navigating to the Parent Academy. It says coming soon, and I'm going to take and próximamente, and I will take those off as soon as we're done here. But if we click and jump right to the Parent Academy, here's what we see. So as a starter, we see an introduction, what this web page is, then the start here. Every video class that we have up here for our parents is both in English and Spanish, and you can see we decided to start with setting up an email address. So it's setting up email in English and Spanish. Chromebooks for Families Part 1, Chromebooks for Families Part 2. Then we have emails for, or not emails, videos for Seesaw overview, assignments, and then connecting to the classroom, and then the same thing for Google Classroom. And down at the bottom is how parents can get help. So why are we telling you this? Well, first off, we're pretty proud. I'm pretty proud, and I'm sure Dr. Purnell is pretty proud of all the work that our teams put together, but also we're proud of the resources we put together to help our families. So we would appreciate it if you, as teachers who are the main point of contact with many of our families, along with the front office, if you're having parents who are expressing frustration or not sure knowing how to interact with these things, please send them to remoteinstruction.org, to the Parent Academy, and let's get the word out. This is phase 1 of this project. Phase 2 will be based on parent feedback. So more to come here, but we're off to what I think is a really fantastic start. Okay. And now, without any further ado, we are going to go to the education services folks, some of whom are on camera and some of whom are not. I'm going to stop presenting my screen here for a second. So good morning, everyone. Feel free to unmute if you like. So we will go down the list. I think we'll begin with Ms. Anso, our intrepid leader, the assistant superintendent, not the assistant supervisor, the assistant superintendent of educational services. Go ahead, Ms. Anso.
Good morning, everyone. So this is your 23rd day of instruction. I know it feels like a lifetime, but know that you are doing a wonderful job. And every time you come behind that screen, our students are happy to see you, no matter what the reaction is during your lesson, but they're happy to be with you. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Ms. Anso. I see Mr. Jaramillo, the Director of Special Education, is on. Mr. Jaramillo, do you have any announcements, or would you like to say something?
No, I'm fine. So again, Alberto Jaramillo, the Director of Special Education, and I look forward to being here today.
Excellent. Miss McIntosh is Director on Special Assignment, and I know that she's lending some extra support to Mr. Jaramillo. Good morning, Miss McIntosh.
Good morning. I hope everyone is doing well. Keep in mind, as as Monica Anso said, keep that smile up and know that children love you, and we will make it through this.
Thank you very much, Ms. McIntosh. Dr. Ratliff is the Director of Early Childhood Education. Good morning, Dr. Ratliff.
Good morning, and I'm just happy to be here. Know that this has been we hear it all the time, unprecedented times, but I just want to tell you all I'm grateful to be here working with you, and if I can be of any help with your youngest learners, please let me know.
And lastly, the directors who were able to join us this morning, lastly but not leastly, Dr. Hernandez, the Director of Assessment and Enrollment, and all these assessment calendars and all these other things. So good morning, Dr. Hernandez.
Good morning, Josh, and good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I want to take a moment to thank everyone for prioritizing student engagement, making sure that the kids are engaged, and if they are not engaged in learning, that you're reaching out to those that can provide that re-engagement support. And I'm happy to be here. Thank God it's Friday and we have a 3-day weekend. So make sure you refresh, you rest, you work out. If you need to, go for a walk and come back ready after the Labor Day. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Dr. Hernandez, do you have any announcements that you need to make or any new items to share before we get started into questions?
So I just wanted to say that I am updating, revising based on feedback obtained through questions or calls or emails. I am providing more detail to the assessment calendar and reminding all, as questions will come up regarding timeline, that the baseline for assessments that are district required is through the end of September. So considering that we are in a new form of instruction and education, we're actually pushing that window that normally takes place within the first 2 or 3 weeks of school to baseline to September 25th. So our goal was to make sure that you were engaged and connected with students and not immediately jump into required assessments, because the district's assessment calendar clearly states that you have all the way through September 25th to complete those baseline assessments. And I'm sure that these may come up throughout the morning or the next few days. If there are any further questions, I'll be happy to respond to those.
Okie doke. Would any of the other directors or Ms. Sanso, are there any announcements you'd like to make that got missed in your greeting?
No.
Okie doke. Ms. McIntosh? You're
No,
already...
thank you.
Okay.
No, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, George and Celia, do we have, it looks like we have a couple of questions.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, thank you to those of you that after did get Josh's email the day before this live question Q&A, you actually send questions in. So, so that's a good practice, because we'll have questions ready for our directors here. So the first question that we have here says, MPUSD is using something called Parent Square to help parents, to communicate with parents and provide trainings, and they're just asking if we can use a system like that, if we have a system like that that might help our families.
So I think that comes closest to me, although that's technically, I think, a Claudia Melendez question. So Parent Square is, in some cases, it's just parent communications. In some cases, it's also the web content management system. But we do have something. I'm not totally familiar with Parent Square, but I've seen it, and I've seen it's what it outputs. But we have something like that with Blackboard Connect and Teacher Connect. which is a project that Mrs. Claudia Melendez, who's our public information officer, that's her project. But we can, and I believe that she utilizes it. So Blackboard Connect and Teacher Connect encompasses both like the all-call system with the actual phone calls, and I believe it contains email and text messaging as well. So we do have some capacity like that, although I don't know if it outputs the same as Parent Square. But you can definitely direct questions to Claudia Melendez as well.
Thanks so much. There's somebody, this might be Josh for you too. There's somebody who's asking that they want to create either a live Facebook page or a YouTube channel to communicate with families on the go. And so they're asking if and how they're able to do that.
So there's a YouTube channel that comes with every teacher's alisal.org Google account. So if you simply go to Facebook, and while you're signed into your Alisal account, go to Facebook, and then in the upper right, there's and this is covered if you've been to level 1 boot camp. This is covered in level 1 boot camp, and I hadn't been thinking about this, but the level 1 boot camps will be starting up for those who haven't gone yet. And this year we're prioritizing those who haven't gone yet, as opposed to folks who are auditing and repeating. Normally we just let whoever would like to come, and if you're auditing, that's fine. There's almost always space, but with virtual boot camps, it's a little bit tougher, and it requires extra moderator support. So we're going to be a little bit, we just need to prioritize the folks who haven't been there yet. So that said, if you've been through level 1, kind of reach back into your memory, but also if you signed in, you go to YouTube in your alisal.org account, you may have to sign into YouTube again, and then there's a place to start my channel, and then you can start a YouTube channel there. With regards to starting a Facebook channel or a Facebook page for it, the district doesn't, EdTech doesn't have an official position on Facebook. Weirdly, again, that would be the person who so EdTech has its own, but in terms of teacher creation and that sort of thing, any sort of guidelines or parameters on that, again, would be Claudia Melendez. And if she's watching this, I'm sure she isn't thrilled that I keep sending stuff in her direction, and I'm sorry, but the public information aspect isn't really educational technology's purview. The YouTube channel, however, you can definitely do that. So a couple of quick pieces of advice if you're starting a YouTube channel for families is when you go live and start announcing it, have at least 3, this is sort of a general YouTube guideline, have at least 3 pieces of content there, and then post new items on a regular basis. So that encourages families to subscribe, have them click the bell so they get notifications. You know, now I sound like a YouTube content creator. Smash the like button and click the bell so you get subscribe and click the bell so you get notifications. But posting on a regular basis will drive more traffic there. Will make your families understand, like, oh, I bet there's something on the YouTube channel about it. And if you have the comments turned on, so families can comment back to you, that can be another great place for getting parent feedback and finding out what will help our families. I will say, however, that in surveying parents, both about remote instruction and about the Remote Parent Academy, parents are have articulated that, you know, especially if they have more than one kid, one teacher maybe uses Remind and another uses Dojo, and then the school uses, you know, the principal uses another thing, and then, but sometimes the teacher who uses Dojo also uses Seesaw, and sometimes the teacher uses Remind uses Classroom. Just keep in mind, like, more channels might seem like, oh, I'm creating more access, but in some cases we're actually creating confusion. So if we're going to pick a special channel to convey information to our parents, we should maybe pick one as individual teachers. I'm not saying that a whole school has to get on the same page. That's not my place to say that. But if you're gonna use one channel for your parents as an individual teacher, if you can try to keep it to one, because they are expressing some frustration that some teachers are using 2 and 3 for the same class. So there you go. Wow, I stretched that out.
Sorry. Sorry, spoke
No,
over you there,
okay,
Josh. No, I was going to say, you don't sound like a YouTube influencer. You sounded more like some of our students on their Seesaw video. So good job. This question is probably going to have to be tag teamed by two directors, possibly. It says, can GLTs help with one-to-one assessments of concept of print?
I can start if you'd like me, Monica. I know Dr. Gomez is not here, so I asked her about that, and it is the discretion of the site to determine the specific activities and protocols that will be used or facilitated by the GLT in conjunction with the leadership at the site. So if those conversations include one-on-one assessments or small group instruction. I was at a site and I actually saw a GLT supporting a student individually remotely. So all that can be coordinated and would be appropriate, including one-on-one assessments, i.e. the concepts of print. So that would be appropriate in my estimation. Anything you'd like to add, Ms. Anso?
Yes, I'd just like to add that if that does happen and if that supports you for instruction, just remember to have a deep conversation with that GLT, because that GLT, that teacher will have the value of the information on behaviors of reading, right? So concepts of print is really assessing if your student is ready to begin reading. Where are they at the reading readiness? So that's valuable information that will be owned by someone who is not the teacher. So I'm just, that's the caution and an advice that I would like to give. I don't want to say you don't have the support. You have all the support and we will support you as much as you want, but just when you're making that instructional decision, make sure you understand that that valuable information will stay with someone else that's not the teacher in practice.
We have kind of a follow-up, I think, that came in right as we started talking about this. The question is, are the concepts of print a may-do or a must-do assessment at each school? It says may, but it feels like at my school, it's a must.
So I can respond to that. If you look at the assessment calendar, it clearly states that all kinders and all kinder teachers will administer concepts of print and BPSD. However, that teachers in first and second grade may also administer. Concepts of print is an assessment that shows skills that are expected of our kindergartners. So they have, that's the pre-literacy, like Ms. Anso said, set of behaviors that must be in place before you begin to break code. So if the kids have those in place, as they build their phonics, then they're building the prerequisite skills to start breaking code as readers. So it is required for kindergarten.
All right, Josh, I think you might be able to help with this next one. Somebody has turned in a help desk ticket regarding the additional monitor. They did it about a week ago, and they're wondering how long should they wait before they kind of maybe make a second contact to be able to get that device?
Well, I can't speak for IT, and IT is are the folks who handle hardware. Sorry, but I mean, I feel like maybe use your discretion. If you know who your site tech is, maybe send out an email, or you can always follow up on the ticket that you've already put in. I think 1 or 2 days is probably not a reasonable amount of time. I think 5 to 7 work days might be, but I also know that they're pretty busy over there. I know that, for example, my assistant, our department secretary, is spending half her time over in their call center, especially since it started being used by teachers and principals now, not just parents. They're getting several hundred calls per day. So so those are sometimes taking the place of tickets. So now, instead of it all coming through the ticket system, now some of it's coming in through calls, and then the calls generate a ticket. So those guys have got a lot going on. That said, I think as long as it's not a nasty note, it's fine to send a follow-up in 5 to 7 days.
Thank you. This is probably going back to Dr. Hernandez. We have some more follow-ups about assessment. One question is about newcomers. Can the newcomers be given the concepts of print? If yes, can a GLT do this?
I think it would be a very appropriate assessment, and it could be administered in either in either English or Spanish, depending on where they are in their foundational literacy. And like I said before, if that is one of the duties that has been agreed upon with the site, to support one-on-one administration, I think it would be very appropriate, as long as, like Ms. Anso said, the teacher is very aware of the results and understands that while it was administered by someone else, which are the behaviors that will in turn impact subsequent success in building literacy. So I don't feel it's necessary. I cannot say it's wrong to pass that task to someone else, as long as they're collaborating. If they are collaborating on the information obtained, then that would be adequate. And it could be done in English or Spanish based on the literacy that the kids are coming in. It would be very appropriate to administer, and it is okay to administer. You have the Jamboards that were shared with the sites and with the coaches. Feel free to push those out if you feel a teacher would benefit from that.
And I'd just like to add something again, is just especially for our newcomers, is if they're reading at grade level in their own language, then the concepts of print might not be necessary, because remember, that's a pre-reading skill. So if they're reading at grade level or close to grade level in their own language, they already have some reading skills, right? So maybe we can have a side conversation on what is the purpose of using the COP for our newcomers, and make sure that we give them the adequate intervention. And if it's building English fluency in reading, then there is a transition program from Spanish to English. So we can definitely have a conversation on that. I just want to make sure that we're using the appropriate assessment for what we are trying to look for and meeting the student at their level.
And I think that just to add on to that, Ms. Anso, know that concepts of print is usually the first assessment administered for non-readers. So if you do recognize a child, even in a newcomer class, as a non-reader, then that would be appropriate. But do consider other behaviors, not just those initial ones. We do have kids that come in 3rd and 4th and 5th grade having no reading experience. So then you can ascertain some behaviors by administering it. So it is intended, again, as the first assessment for kids that are initiating their literacy path prior to breaking code. So mainly our non-readers.
All right, thank you, Dr. H. And we have one that's kind of related, but I think it makes sense to ask it. And I think you kind of answered it, but maybe if you can be more clear about it. So since last year when we went on shelter in place, so this was a teacher that says, since we went into shelter in place in March, shouldn't the first graders possibly get concepts of print? Because normally you would give it to them at the end of the year where they ended, but there's a question for you.
So I think it's important for teachers to have the discretion based on their engagement with students and what they're observing. If they are recognizing kids have not broken code yet and cannot deem whether they are at a DRA 0 to 4, then you may need to go back to concepts of print, because these may be kids that were just barely in kindergarten breaking code and getting into a level 1, 2. You know, if they don't get to a level 4, they're not showing comprehension. They're just basically addressing concepts of print through levels 0, 1, 2, and 3. So if that has not been, if you don't have any evidence that they have that in place, it would be a good starting point to re-administer concepts of print. And not just at SMA, but as a requirement if the kids have not shown the skills they would expect someone coming into 1st grade with, which would be at least a level 4 to 6 based on the DRA. which means they already have some comprehension skills to respond to questions about text.
Thank you. I'm going to throw this one up to anybody who wants to step up. We had this question about, or maybe a concern, I'm going to say, because it's, well, actually, there is a question. We've heard teachers express that keeping track of all the synchronous and asynchronous and all that activity on the engagement record is time-consuming and difficult. And so this question is asking if there's an easier way, or maybe some recommendations for an easier way to track all the activity for logs, because there are all these different platforms. Tracking is tedious and time-consuming, especially with the expectation to do it daily. So any advice or tips on streamlining the tracking process would be appreciated.
I can start with the requirement pertaining to the weekly engagement record. So the weekly engagement record is the backup for attendance in PowerSchool. So if a student participates in live synchronous instruction, and you as the teacher have evidence of them participating, or you have evidence as a teacher that the student is completing asynchronous assignments, then your documentation in the weekly engagement record, which is required as part of our learning continuity plan per SB 98 as backup for attendance, you basically are marking whether they participated live or asynchronously. The detail for the weekly engagement record goes to that, and you just indicate whether they were there minimally or thoroughly, or whether they were not there at all. If the kids have a red in both synchro or asynchro, then they're absent because they did not participate live, or there was no way to ascertain there was any live interaction for them based on what you're marking in the record. But if they participated minimally, which is a yellow, adequately or thorough, then those students can be counted for attendance, and that would be the extent of how the record would be required in relation to attendance. What else is being required beyond this may be a site decision for other types of logs. So I don't have any specifics about what else may be required of you, but as a district, that is the only protocol required to comply with the learning continuity and what SB 98 is asking us to do. I don't know if Monica or Josh would like to elaborate on that.
Well, I'd just like to clarify your last statement is much for the audience as you is what we're saying is PowerSchool attendance and the weekly log that you were just referring to are the only district required, because PowerSchool attendance is district required, and then the weekly attendance log is district required. That's my point of clarification, and not just for me, but for the audience.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then I don't know.
PowerSchool is required, but no longer is PowerSchool a standalone. You have to have a backup document this year during remote instruction that justifies what you're marking in PowerSchool, which is an engagement record.
And I will wait to make my other point because it looks like Ms. Ansel might have something. Oh, no, okay. My other point was Dr. Hernandez referred a couple of times to SB 98, and honestly, when we first went through the law, and we saw what the attendance and participation monitoring requirements were, we actually felt pretty fortunate that we had, without realizing it, sort of already created a thing that, as we understood the law, was required by new SB 98. So to the best of our understanding, I believe that that the weekly engagement log is required by SB 98, and then of course PowerSchool is as well. And as Dr. Hernandez said, one is backup, or I would say documentation for the other. In other words, if there were to be an audit of PowerSchool, would would it stand up to scrutiny? And the audit logs or the weekly attendance logs rather would be our documentation, would be what we would use to prove the veracity of the Power School attendance. And you know, schools are audited for attendance all the times under the best of circumstances. And I don't know if you guys know, but across the district, we are in, please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but in the high 90s. And this is nothing but Josh's gut that is, I'm about to say. This is totally my sort of suspicion and instinct. I have no basis in fact for what I'm about to say, but districts who maintain in the high 90s as attendance, I think are going to be subject to audit because somebody is going to feel like, that sounds like Porky Pies. So they might, so this is why we understand that it's cumbersome, but it's not without reason. It's not superfluous or just because it would be a nice to have.
If I may add something very quickly to that, for example, if we were audited and a school has very high percentage of attendance, they may just go to those schools that have the highest and ask for examples. If a class has documented 100% attendance for a particular week, they may say, okay, well, that's kind of unusual that we have every single student present for the past couple of weeks in this class. Show me the engagement record. If there's no match, then we will have to explain why there were no absences marked in Power School for students who may have had reds in the weekly engagement record. That's why at the auditor level, that's where the backup needs to match and needs to be congruent. So just wanted to add that as an example.
All right, this next question I think has to maybe a little bit of clarity with regards to the way that minutes are supposed to be kind of broken up. The question is, our teachers are wondering why we can't assign all or mostly asynchronous work on Friday to catch up on grading, data entry, parent meetings, and assessments. Can I ask it again? Maybe I did not. So I
think we're all just looking at each other like, okay, who's going to?
I've already talked too much.
Miss Anso, I'm going to let you start on that one.
So I think if you look at your schedules and you reach the minimum for that day out of the percentages, and you were sent a video or screencast by Mr. Harris, and there's a minimum requirement for that day of synchronous minutes, right? So if you're doing your synchronous minutes at the max during the week, I don't see why you cannot make that decision on Fridays where you are doing the minimum minutes. But the other part of SB 98 is, remember, you need daily live interaction. So that's why that it has to happen every day. So I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything to that. Josh?
I mean, you basically said what I was going to say is, so when we were first planning on this, we had every intention of continuing our practice from the spring of giving you a day where you could be all asynchro and for collab and planning, and the state kind of took that away from us. It took away the ability for us to give you that. On the other hand, the reason we put in minimums were because of how many parents were saying, my kid would go days at a time and never see their teacher. So there's a couple of things and so the minimums, the parameters that are set in the teacher guideline are in our learning continuity and attendance plan, which is the new LCAP, but it's not the same as the old LCAP. The state just very thoughtfully used the exact same letters to keep it confusing. But in any case, those were set based on best practice. And as Monica said, I think that, you know, if you're, I mean, the minimum's the minimum. And I understand that's 81 and 84 minutes in first and second, or first through third, and then fourth through 12th. respectively, and then it's 63 in kinder. And I understand that that's a large chunk, but I certainly wouldn't think that it's the majority part of your day, being about an hour and a half. And there's nothing to say that, the guidelines are also there for your discretion. Like, as long as you hit that minimum, there's nothing to say you can't knock all your synchro out in the morning, appropriately broken up for your grade level and their respective attention spans. And then use the rest of the day, as you said, in asynchro and for catching up on all the things that you are meant to catch up on. Also, in the MOU, you're supposed to have time every day for planning, collab, individual student contact, and parent contact. So we did work with ATA to try to build that time in your day. I hear you through the internet. That's not enough time. Yes, I understand that. But there are some places that are telling teachers something like 75 or more % of the daily minutes, which, by the way, these daily minutes are set by the state. We did not arbitrarily pick, because we would not have differentiated 10 minutes between 3rd and 4th grade. Josh may or may not have opinions on that. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to accommodate best practice. Remember, our parents have a certain perception, and there are still plenty of parents out there who think that if you're not teaching synchro, you're not teaching. We know that that's not true, but they still seem to think that anything where the teacher isn't talking directly to the kids through the screen is homework, as opposed to an asynchronous classwork assignment that's independent work or on-demand work. So our parent group is a stakeholder that matters here as well. I think everyone would agree. So part of that was we had quite a bit of parent feedback that said, my kid doesn't see their teacher for 2 or 3, sometimes a week at a time. In the spring, that's not okay. So now the law says we have to have daily interaction, and hence where the guidelines came from. And additionally, the guidelines were built with stakeholder input at every level within the district. There was an emergency EdServe advisory team this summer, and something like 25 or so ATA members had input on that as well.
Thank you. There are a few questions that I think we're going to combine together because we're getting close to the end and we have, excuse me, a few still left. There are a few questions that are asking about training and professional development specifically. Some questions have asked about Wonders, training for Wonders, Achieve 3000, and some of the Renaissance platforms, including AR and AM. I think the question is being, can we receive training on both giving those assessments and maybe interpreting the data for those platforms?
And just if I may add, I think you may be aware of this, but Renaissance Learning just kind of changed their whole, the whole interface. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. So that's why I think that's part of why it's being asked.
So for Wonders, if it's the digital platform that we need training on, we can look into offering maybe an after-school training. And so it would be during the 3 to 5, 3 to 6. I would have to reach out to the vendor or maybe with Ms. Cordero and see what we can get put together. And for Achieve 3000, the same thing. It would be something done after school. So now that that's been asked for, we can put it out as a flyer with OMS link and then see how many people register.
Yeah, and definitely, Ms. Anso, I believe the question with the Wonders, it did have to do with the digital suite kind of being able to, I think, access and how that would work. So that would, for clarity for you. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Mrs. Anso, if you thought that could fit into an hour, we could give over a few episodes of Livestream PD for it. But if you think it'll take longer than that, then.
So I'll have a conversation with Anna to see if she can do the whole digital tool, and if not, then if we have to bring in the vendor, we'll have to work to see what they offer and if it can be done in an hour. Sometimes they'll ask for 3 hours. So yeah, so it would the after school. And then if they're going to, there's a charge to it, right? So an hour for $2,000 is not, we need a little bit more time for them. And Achieve, I can ask, we do have the license with them. So sometimes that comes with PD, and we can ask for, see if they can be done an hour. Like I know Lexia does 90 minutes, and we were able to schedule those in August after school. So from like a 3:15 to 4:45, and then I think a lot of teachers did attend those as well. So I would try and do the same thing for both Achieve and Wonders.
All right, so the answer is Ms. Anso's looking into it. Likely because of the time constraints, it will need to be after school, but if it will fit into an hour, we can wedge it into the live stream. Okay.
And then I think the other question, Dr. H is back now. AR, their platform changed completely. So there's some confusion. They're wondering if we can get some PD on it.
So I want to make sure that the products are finalized. We have one more product, Mayon, that is coming on the 16th. But I am scheduling training with our representative, Sue Kong, and I will ask her to address the suite of programs that we now have through Renaissance. So more to come. I'll talk with you, Ms. Anso and Mr. Harris, about when would be the best time to conduct the training so that I can finalize the scheduling with her. She has offered it. I just want to make sure that we have an opportunity to train on all the systems that now we have available to all kids and teachers.
All right. These two questions are kind of a little bit related, I think. So the question is, how many times is it reasonable to kind of try to contact our families before we kind of pass it on to admin as a teacher? And then related to that was, oops, where did it go? The second question was, attendance. It's attendance wise. If a child, it's not their fault because the device is not working, how do we mark attendance in that case? Because they couldn't get on because of their device or some other technology issue.
Okay, so let me answer the first part of that. Going on with what we've communicated about no less than 60% attendance weekly, meaning 3 out of 5 days, we would expect the teacher to call immediately the moment the student is absent. If a student has been present and is just absent 1 day, then I wouldn't be as concerned. But if a student then is absent the second day who has been present, then I would start to document that in the parent contact log. And then by the third attempt, for sure, make as many attempts possible to contact the family and see what is going on. After 3 teacher connections, then the staff in the office has been instructed to call if there are 3 absences for kids who have been present, or any child who has 3 absences, they start monitoring. Of course, 3 absences seems delayed, so the moment you start recognizing a student who has normally been connected or engaged or participating, and you now see them missing, then it's important to start researching why that student is now not participating. So 3, the most that you should wait for in a week would be 3 misses. But if you have a child that has been there, and you can use that time that during the 2-hour block to see why a student was not present, then you can use that to re-engage them or engage them. The second part to the question is, we have already discussed that if there is an attempt to communicate with the teacher about issues with technology that impact the student's ability to participate or engage, then they should not be marked absent. However, a child or a family who makes no effort whatsoever to inform you of what's going on, then there's no evidence you have to determine why the student was not there. So then the student would be absent. So you have to consider that the participation may have to become to as much as possible asynchronous if there is a way to provide some asynchronous work. But if there is an attempt that is beyond their control to have them stay engaged, then they should not be penalized if they're letting you know that their tools are not working. Go
Dr.
ahead.
I have a clarifier on that last incident. So if a teacher finds out from a family that a device is broken and they're waiting for a replacement or a fix, do they need to reconfirm that every day? In other words, how long does the kid continue to get credit for marked present based on a broken device?
I think it's important to understand system-wide, when a device now becomes available to the student. I don't know that we have a structure to show how that is, how that is addressed, other than
case to case. So
it might need to be a case by case, and if the parent initiates the conversation, but doesn't call on day 2, but the teacher can call and check where are you on it? I haven't received the call, or I haven't received the replacement device. I think the district is looking at providing more tools that could be available for that exchange if a child needs to borrow another one for the time being while their device is being fixed.
So in that case, it seems like if a family says that their child isn't participating because of a broken device, that it needs to be followed up regularly by the teacher to confirm, have you put in requests for help? Have you heard back? Is the device still the issue? Because I could see that without that sort of regular contact, that could be a student that sort of falls through the cracks, or families who say the device is broken and then only tell the teacher and think that that's adequate informing of IT. So I think the teachers need to be clear that telling the teacher doesn't mean you've put in a help request, and that they should call the parent hotline to follow up on our device isn't working.
I think it's critical to work as a team, and the moment the parent informs that, or the student for that matter, informs I'm not able to connect, that we act on remediating that situation or remedying that situation as quickly as possible as a team. So everyone getting the kids connected or re-engaged is the priority. I agree with you. So all as a team trying to strategize.
Right. So I think that the teamwork there for the teacher is make sure the parent calls the hotline. Teachers don't need to feel like you need to put in every help ticket for every kid in your class. That would be even more overwhelming.
We're getting pretty close to the end of our time, and so I just want to make a quick note that there are a few specific questions about assessments and what the recommendations are. And so I think instead of individually asking them live right now, we'll probably forward these to Dr. H to see if he can give us maybe a written answer just to save us some time. But this question is relevant to the question that we were just answering in terms of attendance. This question is asking, how does the attendance clerk fit into the attendance process of contacting parents?
So I alluded to that earlier, and again, they are monitoring attendance as well based on what's in PowerSchool, but their purpose is to find out if there is no excuse for an absence that is marked. So they're following the traditional process. So if they're checking up with families for kids who have unexcused absences, then that is their role, not to investigate why the student is unable to participate. The clerks are not as in tune with the protocols related to instruction, so they're not going to be as connected or able to support the specifics that are impeding that. Their role is to basically for absenteeism and for whether that absences or those absences are excused or not. As if we were in school, the only purpose for them would be to check why a student was absent if there was no excuse documented or provided prior to that absence. So that would be their role. Their role is not to go and check every single weekly engagement record to see why the kids who have reds are not participating. That is not their role at all. Their role is through PowerSchool, not through the weekly engagement records.
Thank you, Dr. H. Monica, before I ask the next question, I just wanted to let you know that a particular coach says that they would be willing to help out with some training with regards to Achieve and so forth. So if you want that name, let me know.
Okay, yeah, send it my way. Or
all right.
coach can contact me.
Yeah. All righty. The question that I have for you is, and this goes for Josh, and I think we work with IT, Josh, you'd be able to answer this, is the question seems to be, or the perception seems to be, is I'm wondering why we are having more blockage on sites and resources online.
I mean, I don't know how to answer that question without more specifics.
That was good. That was going to be my thought too.
It's why do we seem to have more blockages on resources online? I mean, I don't know how to answer this without sounding really flippant. I'm really not trying to be, but that's such a vague question that I can't really answer it. Additionally, educational technology does not control the filter, the web filter. IT does. Last I talked to Mr. Villarreal and Mr. Ornelas, no new additions had been made to it. However, the way web filters work is they work on big swaths of categories. They are not a fine-tuned instrument. They are a blunt instrument. So if sites get tagged by the web filter as a whole for whatever reason, maybe it has one infraction of a digital policy and the algorithm that runs that says, oh, this violates the policy, then it gets tagged as spam. But it also could be that, you know, it seems more to you because you are spending so much more time. You know, this is such a subjective question, right? We are all spending more time trying to find resources online for our students. There was a weird thing where some of our teachers could swear up and down that students had access to YouTube at the end of last year. YouTube has never been unblocked. It is blocked both at the web filter and it is blocked in the Google admin console. It is not turned on in any place for us. So where that perception, and every time we got that report and every time we tested it with the student accounts involved, it was blocked for us. So without specifics where you can say before this time I had access to this site and after this time I didn't, I lost access to this site, I cannot answer that question in any useful way. This is a really long way of saying I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to answer that we're using it more, so we might be noticing more. That was going to be my short answer, Josh, but so you read my mind.
Well, I'm a director. We don't answer anything in fewer words when we can answer it in more words.
Fair enough. This question is actually from a GLT, I believe. And so they're asking if grade level release teachers have access to textbooks that students and teachers are using so that they're better able to help during small instruction. So
if they are at the sites and they need access to hard copies of the textbooks and they're not in the classrooms or they can't borrow any, they can always work through their the library specialist and we can get them some hard copies. Now, if they need access to any online, I think Wonders would be a digital platform they can have access to, maybe Twig. Eureka, if they have a district email, we can do that as well. So it would just be reaching out to me and see what they need access to.
All right, final question. And I know we're all kind of learning this together, but I think at least in my interpretation is the spirit of this question is just asking for recommendation because we're all trying to figure this out together. This teacher is saying that she's just having a hard time administering assessments with her students. So she says that she reminds them to show up. She has them share their screen. She walks them through it. She sends reminders. She's trying all these things that still isn't quite getting to them. And so she's asking for what could be one of her next steps after trying all these things that aren't working.
So I think it's important to collaborate with team members at the site that are experiencing success. I think it's also important to connect it with whatever wraparound services are being provided for children. It is likely the students that are having a hard time keeping to an appointment are the ones that are having a hard time with other factors. So I think keeping in mind and not stressing over a child that cannot participate, having a second option for that could be in that participate in that one-on-one appointment is critical to consider as a backup. Because of the fact that we have no control over circumstances that may happen remotely, like when we're in a meeting and all of a sudden we cannot start a meeting for 15 minutes because something goes wrong with the connection. That is the reality that many of our students may experience when they're given an appointment. So continue the conversation, continue the collaboration. We're looking at options as soon as these become available to offer alternatives that may allow us to test physically. I don't know where that conversation is yet, but it's mainly for students who need language determination per LPAC, and maybe some students in special education. So that is still to come. But at this point, my best recommendation would be for you to discuss with grade level colleagues, and I'll discuss with Artosa, Anna, what she's hearing from teachers in the field that we could offer all as approaches to address some of these issues that are coming up with one-on-one testing.
And I just like to add is a best practice. And I think as teachers, we know that if it's a kindergartner, even a first grader, and you're trying to assess and they start crying or getting nervous, then that just in itself is an assessment, right? That if it's a kindergartner, that itself is telling you they're not ready for that's where they are with reading, right? They're right at the beginning. So you just make a note of that and move on to the next student that shows more skill or, but that is, that's how it's going to drive your instruction. That in itself is a piece that will drive your instruction, saying, okay, I understand where this student is. They have very little interaction with print or don't understand what it's like to read. So I have to start from ground zero with that student. So that itself is an assessment.
All right, Josh, it's all yours.
I was going to say, I think that was our last question, yes?
We lied. We have another one.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
okay. All righty. Okay, folks. So I would like to say thank you to all of the Ed Services Directors, Mr. Jaramillo, Dr. Hernandez, Mrs. Anso, Dr. Ratliff, Ms. McIntosh. Thank you so much for being here. I would also like to say hi to Dr. Palmer, Dr. Purnell, Ms. Fletcher, and Dr. Gomez, who couldn't be here because of schedule conflicts. Speaking of schedule conflicts, this will be the last 8:30 in the morning start time for the live stream PD starting next week, based on the survey that we put out, and also what is manageable with all different stakeholder groups, which we're going to move it to 1 to 2, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Now, what you see up on the screen, it says bit.ly/AliceAllHelp. Those are the open office hours. Those are currently scheduled Wednesdays and Fridays, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. So anything that didn't get covered today, hope maybe George and Celia can help you with that during open office hours. The Friday ones will be rescheduled, and we will announce that once that decision has been made. We are trying to juggle all sorts of stakeholders, different scheduling conflicts, and move things around at all sorts of levels to move the live stream PD. So we appreciate your help. And and understanding. And as we close pretty much all of these, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and be good to our kids. Happy 3-day weekend, and we hope you come back at least take half of one of the days off, because we know how much more everyone's working, but take some time to yourselves. Anyway, thank you very much and have a good weekend.